It started with a laugh. Not just any laugh, the kind of high, flirty laugh Lauren used when she was just drunk enough to lower her guard. It floated across the room like a misplaced line from another conversation, out of sync with the relaxed murmur of the party. I was by the kitchen island, swirling a watered-down bourbon, trying to follow a story my old college friend Aaron was telling. Something about his kid getting into a fight over a swing set. But the moment I heard her, the rest of the room faded. My head turned before I even realized I was doing it. There she was, Lauren, my wife of 6 years, standing near the big stone fireplace, lit by the orange flicker of logs burning slow and lazy behind the grate. Her posture was too relaxed, her smile a little too bright. She was leaned in close to a guy I only half recognized. Tall, stylish, smug-looking. I'd seen him once at a company holiday thing. Jonas, that was his name. One of the new team leads in her department. His hand was on her back. Not overt, not obscene. Just the tips of his fingers resting against her sweater like it was casual. Natural. Like it belonged there. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was that she let it sit. She didn't pull away. She didn't even seem to notice. And that laugh wasn't for the crowd. It was for him. I must have been staring longer than I thought, because then she looked up. Her eyes met mine. For half a second, just a flicker, I saw something in her expression that didn't belong there. Not surprise, Lauren wasn't easily startled. Not guilt either. It was more like dread. Like the panic you feel when you trip and know you're gonna fall but can't stop it. And then it vanished. Just like that. She pulled away from Jonas in one smooth, practiced move, like it was part of the joke. She turned her body toward the group surrounding them and threw her head back, laughing again, louder this time. Everyone else chuckled along like a laugh track had been cued. "Oh my God! You guys!" she called out, flashing that perfect, blinding smile that everyone loved. Jason gets this face like I've just summoned the devil every time I talk to anyone from work. The crowd laughed louder. Some looked over at me, grinning, like I was the punchline of a harmless inside joke. Lauren kept going, eyes wide in mock horror. "Babe, relax. I'm not joining a cult. We're just talking about spreadsheets." More laughter. Even Jonas, to his credit, managed to smile. But it looked tight, forced, like maybe he wasn't in on the plan. I forced a smile. Reflex. Nothing behind it. It wasn't jealousy I felt. That would have been easier. Cleaner. Jealousy at least had direction, heat, urgency. This was something else. Something colder. A low ache starting to pulse beneath my ribs. She had deflected too fast. Made the whole thing a joke to cover the awkwardness. Not because there was nothing to hide, but because there was. I took another sip of my drink. Tasted sour, watered down, too warm. My friend Aaron was still talking, but I couldn't hear a word. My ears were ringing. My body was in that kitchen, but my mind had already slipped outside. Away from the music, the laughter, the heat of the fireplace. I looked at Lauren again. She was still talking animatedly to the group, but now with a hand on her hip, her other hand gesturing like she was presenting something hilarious. A few of the girls were cracking up. Jonas was smiling again, but his gaze kept flicking toward her, searching for cues. She wasn't just entertaining them. She was managing the moment, controlling the energy, controlling the story, and she just made me the paranoid husband in everyone's eyes. That was the part that got me. Not the laugh. Not even the way she'd touched him or let him touch her. It was how quickly and surgically she'd flipped the script. I didn't want to make a scene. God knows how that would have gone. Husband loses it over wife's innocent joke. That's how it would have been remembered. I'd be the insecure guy who couldn't handle his wife having friends. She'd deny anything inappropriate, of course. She always did. I stepped away from the kitchen. My throat felt tight, like I needed air, like I needed space. I weaved through a group of people playing some card game in the corner, muttered an excuse to no one in particular, and slipped out through the sliding glass doors that led onto the back deck. The night hit me like a wall, cold and quiet. The lake was maybe 20 yards away, dark and still under the moonlight. A few lanterns were lit along the patio rail, their glow just strong enough to catch the frost forming on the wooden floorboards. I gripped the railing and took a long breath. I didn't want to jump to conclusions. I told myself that I wasn't that guy. I'd never been that guy. But then again, how many conclusions had I already ignored? It wasn't just tonight. It had started months ago. Maybe longer if I was honest with myself. It was in the little things. The phone calls she always took on the balcony, no matter the weather. The way she'd started wearing perfume on weekdays again. Not the subtle kind either, but the bold, musky kind that lingered like a signature. Once, she'd come home late after a strategy dinner and hung her coat up in the hallway. I went to grab it for her because it had started raining. As I lifted it, a scent hit me that wasn't hers. Not mine either. Men's cologne. Strong, woodsy, and unfamiliar. I asked about it. She said it must have been from the Uber. The driver probably wore too much. I believed her. Back then, I still wanted to. But now, standing here in the cold, I couldn't unsee what I'd just witnessed. I couldn't unhear that laugh, or the way she'd neutralized the moment like a PR professional cleaning up a scandal before it made headlines. The worst part? Everyone believed her. And why wouldn't they? Lauren was good. She always had been. She could spin anything, twist any story into a charming misunderstanding. She'd once convinced my sister she hadn't borrowed her dress, even while literally wearing it. She didn't just lie, she reshaped reality. With a smile. And tonight, that smile had been pointed like a dagger. My hands gripped the railing tighter. The wind off the lake stung my face, but I didn't move. I didn't want to go back inside yet. I wasn't ready. Inside that house, there were people laughing. Friends. Strangers. Some who knew Lauren, some who didn't. But none of them knew what I knew, not really. None of them saw the little shift in her expression before she turned the scene into a punchline. None of them knew about the cologne on her coat, or the guarded way she tilted her phone away when I walked by, or how she'd started volunteering for out-of-town conferences again, after years of avoiding travel. I thought we were solid, unshakable even. We'd had our fights, sure, but nothing serious. We'd been through layoffs, medical scares, a miscarriage. We'd survived that. We were partners. At least I thought we were. But the cracks were starting to show. And once you saw them, it was impossible not to notice the way the whole thing was shifting. Tilting. Sliding towards something you didn't recognize. Inside, the party carried on. I could see her through the glass door now, laughing with someone new. A drink in her hand. Her hair tucked behind one ear. She looked relaxed. Effortless. But something about the way she kept glancing toward the door made my stomach twist. Like she was checking to see if I was still out here, or if I'd left altogether. I looked down at my drink, still half full. Useless. Then I looked back at her. And in that moment, I realized something that made my chest go hollow. She wasn't worried I'd make a scene. She was hoping I wouldn't. I stayed outside for longer than I probably should have. Long enough for the cold to settle into my bones. But when I finally slid the door open and stepped back into the party, the warmth felt wrong. Fake. Like the kind of heat that comes off stage lights, not real, just for show. Inside, the party was still going strong. Someone had put on a throwback playlist, and a group of people near the living room were singing along to some 2000s pop anthem like they were in a bar on karaoke night. I gave a few polite nods, slipped past the bar cart, and made my way down the hallway toward the coat room, telling myself I just needed to get my bearings. Take a breath. Maybe leave early. I wasn't looking to eavesdrop. That part's important. I didn't go looking for what I heard next. I wish I had. That would have made it feel more like a choice. But no, this wasn't some calculated move. This was a wrong turn. A simple, stupid decision to take a quiet hallway instead of the crowded living room. And just like that, I found myself stopped cold outside the guest bedroom door, because I heard my wife's voice. Not her public voice, the one she used when she was telling stories or charming coworkers. This was different, softer, closer, real. I swear he has no idea, she said, followed by a low laugh. Like, not a clue. Another voice, female, joined in. You're seriously still getting away with this? "Oh my God," Lauren whispered, drawing the words out. "He's so trusting. It's actually kind of sad." They laughed again. That casual, cruel kind of laughter people use when they know they're not being watched. My heart stopped. "I mean," Lauren continued, "at this point, I could be in the same room as him with someone else and he'd still assume I was just networking." My body tensed. I was literally holding Jonas's hand earlier and he just stood there like deer in headlights. Another laugh. "Stop. You were so bad." "No, I'm serious," Lauren said, and something about the way she dropped her voice on those words. "I'm serious." It knocked the air out of me. "We were at that hotel off the interstate last weekend?" He thought I was in Atlanta for a client dinner. "Wait, the one by the lake?" "Yup," she said. "Third time we've met there." My skin went cold again. Not from the air outside. This was different. Internal. Like something inside me had shut off. They kept laughing. Not at a joke, at me. I stood there, frozen. I didn't move. Didn't breathe. I just listened to my wife casually confirm everything I'd spent months doubting. Gaslighting myself over, questioning and then brushing off. I've been right. Worse than right. The hallway felt too narrow. The walls too close. I backed away slowly. Like if I moved quietly enough, none of it would be real. I turned toward the stairs, walked like a ghost back into the main part of the house, and tried to pretend I hadn't just heard my marriage hit the floor like a plate dropped from the counter. People were still laughing, drinking, dancing. Someone handed me a beer and said something about the fire pit. I nodded, though I wasn't listening. I looked across the room and saw Lauren again. She was with a different group now, standing near the sliding doors I'd just come through. Her face was lit by the glow of her phone. She was texting. Maybe him. Probably him. And just like that, another memory came back, clearer now than it had been when it happened. 2 weeks ago, she came home at 4 in the morning. I'd been asleep when she slipped in, the front door creaking just enough to wake me. I remember looking at the clock, squinting through the darkness as she tiptoed into the room. "Where were you?" I asked, my voice half asleep. She didn't flinch, just smiled, leaned down, and kissed my forehead. "Work dinner ran late," she whispered. "Everyone stayed over at Jamie's. I didn't want to drive." I believed her. At the time, it made sense. She even smelled like wine and fancy appetizers. I rolled over and went back to sleep. But now it was obvious. The hotel. The lies. The way she laughed just a little too hard whenever I joked about her long hours. She'd been with him that night. Of course she had. The rest of the night blurred together. I don't even remember how we got home, if she drove or if we carpooled. I don't remember what she said, or if she kissed me goodnight, or if I kissed her back. All I remember is lying in our bed hours later, wide awake, staring at the ceiling, and feeling something irreversible settle inside me. I didn't know this woman anymore. I was married to a stranger. She slept beside me, peaceful, even snoring a little. The kind of sleep that comes easy to someone who's already moved on mentally, emotionally. She was already living a life outside of this one. The part she shared with me was just the facade now. Placeholder. Something to keep things neat. But I knew. And knowing changed everything. The next few days passed like I was walking underwater. Everything looked the same. Our house, her smile, the familiar rhythm of our lives. But it all felt muffled. Like I'd been dropped behind glass. Conversations with friends felt hollow. Work was background noise. Even meals tasted like cardboard. I kept telling myself I needed to confront her. Demand. Something. But I didn't. Not right away. Instead, I watched. There's something terrifying about watching a person you love and realizing they're performing. Once you know what to look for, it's everywhere. The delayed reactions, the careful phrasing, the overcompensating touches. She kissed me on the cheek that Monday morning before work and said, "Don't forget to grab eggs." Like that was the most important thing in the world. Like the entire foundation of our marriage hadn't been cracked wide open in the last 48 hours. That was the first day I noticed she'd changed her phone's lock screen. Nothing dramatic, just a new photo. But it wasn't of us. It wasn't even a picture I recognized. A city skyline at night, distant and unfamiliar. Abstract. Neutral. It wasn't until the next day I realized she wasn't doing it on purpose. She wasn't trying to hide anymore. She didn't think she had to. She was convinced I didn't know. And because she believed that, she wasn't being careful anymore. And that's when I found it. It was Thursday evening. She was in the shower. I was in the kitchen making dinner, chopping vegetables I didn't even want to eat, when I walked past her laptop sitting open on the dining table. Normally, she was obsessive about keeping it closed, locked, carried it with her everywhere, even just to go upstairs. But not that night. The screen was still glowing. A half-written message in an open chat window. I told myself I shouldn't look, that it wasn't right, that if I wanted the truth I should ask for it. But I didn't stop walking. I didn't blink. I just sat down and read. The chat was with someone named Mads. Madison, I assumed, one of her closest friends at the office. A name I'd seen before in group texts, never thought twice about. The messages read like something out of a bad dream. Lauren, we were at the lake house this weekend. I swear I thought he saw us. Mads. Did he say anything? Lauren, no, but I caught him looking. It freaked me out for a second. Mads. So what did you do? Lauren, I made a joke. Turned it into a look how paranoid he is moment. Everyone laughed. Including him, I think. Mads. God, your ruthless face with tears of joy. Lauren. I didn't even feel bad. Is that horrible? Mads, nah. If he's still falling for it, that's on him. My mouth went dry. I scrolled up. There were older messages, dozens. Plans for work trips that were really rendezvous at boutique hotels. Jokes about how naive I was. Photos. Not explicit, but int asterisk made enough. One of her holding a wine glass in a hotel room I didn't recognize. Another of her in a long coat with nothing visible underneath. The caption. He thinks I'm at a client dinner. And then the one that broke something in me. Lauren. Sometimes I think he knows, but he just doesn't want to deal with it. Like he's too comfortable to blow up our life. I sat there for a long time. Eventually, the shower turned off upstairs. Pipes creaked. The ceiling thumped as she moved around. Still, I didn't move. I didn't panic. I didn't even cry. I felt quiet. That kind of quiet that only comes after something shatters. By the time she came downstairs, fresh-faced, towel still wrapped around her hair, I had already made up my mind. She didn't notice me sitting there. Just walked into the kitchen and asked if I'd remembered the eggs. Like everything was normal. I didn't answer. I just watched her reach for a glass, fill it with water, and take a long sip. This woman, this stranger, standing in our kitchen, wearing the t-shirt I bought her 3 birthdays ago, was gone. Or maybe she'd been gone for a while. I spent the weekend packing. Not all at once. I didn't want her to notice. I told her I needed space to focus on a deadline. I moved boxes into my car while she was on a video call. I smiled when she kissed me goodbye to go grab drinks with the team. She thought I was fine. That's how good her lie had become. And how good mine was now, too. On Sunday night, after she fell asleep, I sat on the edge of the bed and just looked at her. Really looked. Her breathing was slow, steady. Her hair was sprawled across the pillow the way it always was. Her hand twitched in her sleep like it sometimes did when she was dreaming. For a second, I imagined waking her, telling her I knew everything, watching the truth hit her face like cold water. But I didn't, because that's not how I wanted it to end. She'd made our life into a performance. A cover story. A well-managed brand. I wouldn't give her a finale, so I stood up, walked downstairs, left the key on the counter, and I left. No fight, no drama, no warning, just silence. It's strange how quiet the world gets after you walk away from a life you've been building for years. No arguments, no slammed doors, no dramatic tears or final words. Just nothing. I spent the first night in a roadside motel an hour out of town. A box of my things in the trunk. My laptop, a few shirts, a worn duffel bag stuffed with what I thought I'd need for a week or two. It wasn't much. I didn't want to take too much. Didn't want it to feel like I was planning to stay gone forever. even though deep down, I knew I was. I sat on the edge of a stiff mattress, the glow of a gas station sign blinking outside the window, and stared at the blank TV screen like it might give me answers. I kept waiting for the regret to show up, the panic, the part of me that would say, "You overreacted. You misunderstood. Go back." It never came. All I felt was exhausted. Not the kind of tired you fix with sleep. The kind that wraps around your bones and stays there. The next morning I checked my phone. 8 missed calls. 3 voicemails. All from Lauren. The first one was her voice upbeat, maybe still pretending. "Hey, I just woke up and you weren't here? Did you run out for coffee or something? Call me." The second was quieter. "Okay. I'm starting to get a little worried. Please call me." The third. Only 4 words. Her voice barely above a whisper. "Jason, where are you?" I didn't listen to the rest. I turned the phone off and left it in the drawer beside the motel bed. Over the next few days I drifted. Stayed at a friend's place for a bit. Aaron, the guy from the party. He didn't ask questions. Just handed me a beer and pointed me toward the guest room. I slept there for 4 nights without really speaking. He didn't push. Just left takeout containers outside the door like I was recovering from surgery. And in a way it was a kind of grief I hadn't expected. Not loud. Not devastating. Just dull. Constant. Like a pressure in my chest that wouldn't go away. But something else happened, too. On the 5th morning, I woke up and didn't feel it as much. It was still there, but it wasn't everything. I made coffee. Real coffee. Not whatever Lauren used to brew in those ridiculous pour-over contraptions. Just drip, strong, black. I stood in Aaron's kitchen, sunlight hitting the counter, and for a second, it was small but real. I felt free. Not happy. Not even close. But free. Later that day I called a lawyer. Not because I wanted revenge. Not because I wanted to fight. But because I knew how this worked. I'd seen enough friends dragged through messy endings because they tried to handle things like adults. Tried to make it easy, quiet, fair. Lauren had mocked me behind my back. Lied to my face. Spent months rewriting our life like it was a cover story. I wasn't going to give her the benefit of the doubt anymore. I had the messages. The screensh *TS. The photos. Everything I needed to make it clear who had ended things. I emailed them to the lawyer the next morning. He didn't say much. Just, "This is more than enough." I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. That night I thought about calling her. Not to fight. Just to hear her voice. To ask her quietly why. Not the dramatic "why did you do this to me?" Just a real, honest "why wasn't I enough?" But I didn't. Because I already knew the answer. It wasn't about me. It never was. Whatever hole she was trying to fill, it wasn't shaped like me. And if it ever had been, she'd carved it into something else long before she met Jonas. Or whoever came before him. Or whoever would come after. I'd been a placeholder. A safe bet. And when she got bored, she traded up or thought she did. Let her have him. I wasn't angry. Not anymore. What I felt was sharper than anger. But quieter. Clarity. The next week, she texted again. And again. Messages I didn't read, but I saw the previews on my screen when I turned my phone back on. The tone had changed. Less confusion. More desperation. "Please just tell me where you are. I made a mistake. I don't want to lose you." The last one came 2 days later. "You left. Does that mean we're done?" I didn't answer. That silence was my answer. I moved into a short-term apartment on the other side of the city. Nothing special. Cheap carpet, mismatched appliances, a bed that squeaked when I shifted. But it was mine. For the first time in years, every square foot of a space was mine. No half-finished craft projects in the corner. No rosemary candles that gave me headaches. No silent judgment over laundry left unfolded. Just quiet, and space, and the slow, strange feeling of coming back to myself. I started cooking again. Real food. Nothing fancy, but enough to make the place smell like something. I went for walks. Bought books I'd been meaning to read for years. Sat by the window some nights with music playing low, watching headlights pass by, and thought, Maybe this isn't the end of something. Maybe it's the beginning. Eventually, the legal papers were sent. Lauren didn't contest. She didn't even try to call. Not after that. I don't know if she was shocked, or just accepted it. Maybe she told herself I'd come around, that I was just processing or punishing her. But weeks passed, then a month, and nothing changed. The divorce was finalized quietly. I signed the papers at a beige office desk, shook a stranger's hand, and walked out into the sunlight like nothing had happened. She didn't show up. Didn't need to. What we had died long before the paperwork did. There's a strange kind of peace that comes after everything falls apart. Not the peace you imagine, the deep, enlightened calm they talk about in self-help books. It's messier than that. Uneven. Comes in small moments. Like realizing a day passed and you didn't think about her. Or waking up and not checking your phone for messages you know aren't coming. It's the kind of peace that grows quietly, when no one's watching. After the divorce was finalized, I expected something big. A breakdown. A relief cry. Some cinematic release of emotion where I'd yell at the sky or trash a room or laugh like a man freed from prison. But none of that happened. Instead, I went home, heated up leftover pasta, sat on the couch, ate in silence, then brushed my teeth and went to bed. That was it. That was the day my marriage officially ended. No closure, no confession, no dramatic confrontation. And in some strange way that made it easier, because there was nothing to debate anymore. No more what if, or maybe she didn't mean it. The version of her that I'd loved, the person I married, was gone. Or maybe she'd never really existed. Maybe I just loved the idea of her. The way she smiled at parties. The way she used to laugh at my worst jokes. The way she'd fall asleep in the car on long drives, curled up like a kid in the passenger seat. But those were just moments. Snapsh *TS. And 1,000 good moments can still be wrapped around a lie. A month after the papers were signed, she sent one last text. I hope you're okay. I think about you every day. I didn't answer. There was nothing left to say. I was okay. Not great. Not healed. But okay. And that was enough. I started running again. I'd stopped back when things were busy. Work, errands, house projects, whatever excuse I'd been using at the time. But now, with no one to answer to and no one to explain myself to, I laced up my old sneakers and hit the trail behind my building. The first run was awful. 10 minutes in, my lungs were on fire, and I felt like my legs were made of wet sand. But the second was better. And the third even better than that. It wasn't about getting in shape. It was about doing something that reminded me I still had control. Control of my time, my body, my mind. For so long, I hadn't realized how much of myself I'd given away. I'd let Lauren take up so much space in my head. Even before the affair. I'd been managing her moods, her silences, her long absences, her sideways glances. I thought I was being a good husband. Supportive, steady. But the truth? I'd just been afraid. Afraid that asking too many questions would scare her away. That pointing out the cracks would make them grow faster. That demanding honesty would mean facing something I wasn't ready for. I was ready now. Too late, maybe, but ready. I started spending more time with people again. Friends I hadn't seen in years reached out when they heard what happened. Not in a gossipy way, at least not most of them, but in that awkward, well-meaning way people try to show up when they don't know what to say. Aaron came by one night with a six-pack and no agenda. We sat on the balcony, staring at nothing, drinking in silence. You okay? He asked eventually. Getting there, I said. He nodded. You don't have to talk about it if you don't want to. I know. More silence. Then he said, I never liked her. It wasn't cruel. Just honest. It hung in the air for a minute before I replied. Why didn't you say anything? You looked happy, he shrugged. Didn't want to be that guy. Fair enough. That conversation stuck with me. Because I'd looked happy. And maybe I'd even believed I was. But what I'd really been was numb. Comfortable in the routine. Afraid of change. Willing to believe that distance and secrets were just phases you worked through in marriage. Turns out, some phases are just warning signs you choose to ignore. I started journaling, too. Nothing deep, just late-night thoughts when I couldn't sleep. Things I wish I'd said. Things I was afraid to admit. I didn't even use her name most of the time. Just her or you. Here's one I remember. You made me doubt my own instincts. That's the part I'm still trying to forgive. Another one. I wasn't perfect, but I never lied. And that should have counted for something. And maybe the most honest one. I stayed longer than I should have because I was more afraid of being alone than being unloved. That one hurt to write, but it was true. It wasn't all brooding and reflections, though. Life kept happening whether I wanted it to or not. Work got busier. I got promoted, ironically, a month after the divorce. Lauren used to say I never went after what I wanted hard enough. Funny how I'd started doing that the second she was gone. I reconnected with my sister. Took a road trip to see our parents for the first time in almost a year. Cleaned out my inbox. Cleaned out my head. Took a weekend and repainted the apartment walls a color she would have hated. And little by little, I started feeling human again. Not healed. Not better. Just me. For the first time in a long time. One night, around 3 months after I left, I ran into someone who knew her. A mutual friend, Rebecca, from a group we used to see at game nights. I hadn't talked to her in ages, but we bumped into each other at a bookstore, of all places. She hugged me like she wasn't sure if she was allowed to. I heard, she said gently. Yeah, I said. It's been a process. She nodded. She told everyone you just needed time. That stung. Because of course she did. Of course she was still managing the narrative. I didn't ask what else she said. I didn't care. But Rebecca looked at me for a moment, then added, I'm glad you got out. I blinked. Out. She hesitated. She always made it seem like you were the lucky one. But the rest of us. We saw the way she treated you. I didn't know what to say to that. So I just said, thanks. She smiled. If you ever want to come to another game night, you'd be welcome. I nodded but didn't commit. Still, something about that moment stuck with me. The way she said got out like it was a rescue. Like I'd escaped something bigger than a marriage. And maybe I had. Later that night, I sat on my couch. Lights low, soft music humming from a speaker. I looked around at the space I now called mine. It still felt temporary in some ways. But it was slowly becoming a home. My home. And for the first time in what felt like forever, I didn't feel like a man who'd lost everything. I felt like a man who had something left to build. Not because she left. Not because I walked away. But because I chose not to let her lie become the last word. I wasn't looking for anyone, just coffee. But she was there, reading alone near the window. We made eye contact. Smiled. Later, she asked about my book. Her name was Elise. No expectations, no history. Just a quiet spark. I didn't tell her anything personal. Not yet. But for the first time in a long while, I didn't feel like a broken man. I felt open. And that was enough for a beginning. Lauren called. Just once. I let it ring. No voicemail, no follow-up. I stared at the screen, waiting for a feeling that never came. Not anger. Not sadness. Just nothing. I realized then I wasn't hers anymore. Not even in memory. Whatever we had was gone. Buried beneath all the lies. I turned off the phone, walked outside, and breathed in the cold air. Felt clean. New. Like I'd finally stepped out of her shadow for good.